what would you say when you think about technology and learning? Like, what are some of the challenges and opportunities? Just across all generations, across all users.
Yeah, so challenges and opportunities. I think one of the challenges for us, yeah, and I've indicated this a little bit in previous remarks, but I think one of the challenges for us is to avoid certain assumptions about the population just based on their age. It's also a challenge for us to avoid what I call the shiny object syndrome, and I think your listeners will be familiar with this. When someone decides that, oh, virtual reality is cool, we need to do that, and so they put the technology and the coolness factor way ahead of any actual practical utility. So everybody jumps into the new technology without giving a real thought to how are we going to make that relevant? How is it going to be useful for the individuals? Will it meet their needs and so on? Does it bring something new and interesting to the portfolio of things that we can do to engage our people in our organization? So I think we need to avoid the shiny object syndrome. And then in terms of opportunities, I think that for me, and again, I'm in a learning space. So I'm always thinking about how can we take people on a journey from sort of problem identification in their context, making that super real and familiar, and tapping into their intrinsic motivation around, that's tough for me. What can I do about that? Taking them from that moment, from that realization, all the way to a place of supported practice with new tools and behaviors in the work environment. How do we get them there? And in that arc, from a learning perspective, there are any number of new technologies that can help support the learner across that journey. And for me, that's the real opportunity, that there's just an ever-growing, ever-expanding set of tech that can do everything from introduce new content in an engaging way to providing coaching to providing supported meeting times and virtual meeting times to immersing people in experiences that trigger an emotional response that we know from the science around, from the brain science around learning. Those emotional responses really do a much better job of creating deep-seated memories from which we can draw later on when we're at work. So there's all sorts of new technologies that are out. VR is one of them that continue to offer us opportunities when it comes to really delivering powerful and impactful educational experiences for our people. I think that I think there's another thing. I just want to tell one story, if I may. So the promise,
Yeah, please.
in
Sure.
my view, the promise of some of the younger generations having back to this idea of immigrant versus native versus resident versus visitor, the familiarity, that so many young people, Gen Z, have with technology. Allows for connections that for those people of my age group, I'm a late boomer, would find really amazing, and shocking, frankly. I came home from work one day, and my older son, he was about 12 at the time, and his prized possession was his Xbox. It was like the first generation Xbox, and my son was at home, and he came down the stairs and he said, "Dad, do you have a screwdriver?" And I was like, "Sure." And this is like the first time this kid has ever asked for a tool. It's like, "Sure, I got a screwdriver." And I said, "What are you doing?" He says, I'm helping and he named some cryptic figure. He is like, Assassin 451. I'm helping Assassin 451 with a problem with his Xbox. I gotta go. So he's on fire to solve a problem. And I just, out of curiosity, I followed him up to his room. There, he had a computer logged into the internet, right, with a screen populated with chats. There was all these different chat sessions going with all these different people. Blink, 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 pop, things popping up. He had the phone, the house phone on, and he had someone on the phone. And then his prized possession was in pieces on the floor. And I said, "What's going on?" And he turned to me and he said, "Dad, Assassin 451's little brother broke his Xbox, and so I'm working with my gamer friends. We all play this game together to figure out how to fix his Xbox. And so I'm taking apart mine so I can see the pieces and then tell him over the phone what to do. And my friends online here have had this problem before, and they are telling me what to tell him to do." So this is blowing my
Wow.
mind. The level of trust, that this young person had, facilitated by this new tool set of technologies, online forums for chat sessions for people who are fans of a particular game. It was, to me, a light bulb went off that in the vastly connected world, we have the opportunity for rapid trust to be built between people who don't ever need to meet each other face to face. It may, in fact, never. And I think that's a huge opportunity for us, and a great promise. Now we can talk about the fact that rapid trust can also be very fragile, and so certain things can happen, and people kind of undo their connections and so on. But I think that's one of the really powerful things that the new technology and the familiarity with that technology for solving problems and connecting across great distances with people of particular affinity groups. I think that's a huge one.
Excellent, Steve. Wow, what a story! And Steve, if I may, just since you work with technology and a lot of young and emerging leaders, where do you see the spectrum? Because now, if one goes and extrapolates, there is the fact that yes, that generation is very comfortable and makes trust rather quickly. But you also
Mm-hmm.
now see, and especially associated with Gen Z, is things
Yeah.
like cyberbullying and so on. So,
Yep. Yep.
and perhaps not happening as much with maybe the Gen Y. So, wondering, uh, is there a spectrum? Should we withdraw? What would you? What's your observation there?
Yeah, and this is so for the audience. We're really getting into the edge of, like, we all will have opinions about this, and we're in a field of evaluation and data collection and beginning to understand the ramifications, the implications of complete immersion in communications technologies generally. We have all seen the terrible effect of disinformation campaigns all around the world, disinformation being everywhere, and the impact that can have on people. We've all seen the ability for, that certain people take the a leisurely approach to being good people, good human beings, because of the distance that is created by technology. They can sit back without a face and without a voice and type in something very nasty to someone they don't even know, just because they can. And so part of what I'm seeing is that Gen Z are much more sort of aware of this than perhaps people of my of my generation. I know that I still get, like, my mind gets blown when people say really nasty things, and my sense is that Gen Z is much more like, yeah, that happens, just we need to move on. However, at the same time, you get all of these, there's a lot of attention right now on the dangers of malicious interaction online especially for young people. And so I think that there's an evolving space that we need to be really aware of, which is, how do we use those tools for good? And we need to, in some ways, we need to really learn from Gen Z. We need to talk with them. We need to involve them in decision making about particular tools and what they're good for, what they could be useful for in the organization, and so on. Please don't situate a bunch of people of our age, of my age, in a room and have them decide what the Gen Z population in your organization need. Don't do that. Go get some of them and involve them in that conversation. And I think that,
Yeah.
I think that would be my advice for people, is that this is an ongoing and evolving situation where there is good and bad. And let's focus on the good, and let's involve the Gen Z people in those discussions.